1.41 crore rupees. Now that sounds like a lot of money to you and me, but for this SUV we have with us today, it sounds like a bit of a bargain. This is the Mercedes-Benz EQS SUV, the brand's new flagship luxury EV. And we're going to drive it today in Hyderabad, and I'm going to try and tell you why it is a bargain in this segment of big super luxury electric SUVs. So stick around. Well, I can start by telling you how they've managed that price of 1.41 crore, and the answer is local assembly. Yes, 2 years ago when Mercedes set up its Chakan plant to assemble the EQS sedan, we knew other EVs would follow, and the EQS SUV is the second EQ model to be put together here. With its smooth aerodynamic design, the EQS SUV looks very similar to the EQE SUV. So how do you identify the newer model? For one, it's larger at over 5.1 meters long, the gloss black blanked off grille is wider, and the headlamps are larger with 3 LED strips instead of 2. I love the little stars on the front fascia, which also extend to the lower air intakes. Around the side, gloss black plastic lines the wheel arches, under which sit 21-inch chrome wheels that look just the right size. Flush door handles help contribute to its incredibly low drag coefficient, and the metallic side step under the doors highlights its long 3210mm wheelbase. Things are subtler at the back, with an intricate LED light signature and chrome bumper insert being the only things that really catch your eye. It's familiar inside too, and let's start with the front seat. Now the front of this cabin is going to be very familiar if you've been inside any of Merc's other big EQ models like the EQS sedan or the EQE. But in case you haven't, let me just tell you, it's a wonderful place to be. It's certainly not short on drama, which of course starts with the hyperscreen, a big 17.7-inch central screen and two 12.3-inch screens on either side, one for the passenger and of course the driver instrument display. It's all very dramatic. It is ultimately 3 separate screens made to look like one, but the effect is just tremendous. I mean, to have a map screen so big is just something else. It's also very clear, very functional and very intuitive. Of course, that means it's swallowed up a lot of physical controls. You still get a few capacitive buttons over here and a physical stop-start button and a physical hazard light button, but the rest is all in the screen, including the AC controls, which are fixed down to the bottom here. Some of the other functions that I would have liked to have as shortcuts over here that are inside the touchscreen are the ADAS functions, which you do have to go into a menu for, as well as lifting the air suspension for those really heinous speed breakers. A lot of the seat controls are also in the touchscreen. You do get to use these capacitive touch buttons to do the basic adjustments as well as activate the memory and the heating and cooling functions. But if you want the massage function, which is available on these front seats, you have to go into the menus. Now also this car has 5-zone climate control. Yes, a separate zone for the third row of seats. And while you can access the front climate control from here and the second row climate control from back there, for the 5th zone, you have to access it from the touchscreen once again. That said, it's all very neatly laid out, beautiful to behold and very slick in its functioning. But what about the rest of the cabin? This being an EQ model, it's got these signature bronze elements in the AC vents, which themselves are very slim and worked into the dashboard very nicely. Well, this is the cream color. There is also a more conventional beige available should you want, but there's no black or tan like in the ICE cars. The dashboard is set a little bit high, which for shorter drivers like me can be a little bit intimidating, but you can adjust the seat to get around that. And yes, I'm sure this cream color will stain pretty early on. The steering wheel is your classic Mercedes new age steering wheel with a lot of capacitive touch buttons on here that I'm not such a big fan of. But there is of course the Hey Mercedes assistant, which can get you a lot of functions of your voice control. Quality on the whole is really good. Like this wood finish, it's nice and textured. You don't get the stars like you get in the EQS sedan, you might remember those, but I still like this really nice wood texture. It works well. It feels solid too, and under here you'll find cup holders, a wireless charger, 2 USB ports. There's more storage still in this really deep cubby hole down there, which also has USB ports. And down here there is a nice large open space for even more storage with even more USB ports, which is a great touch. In total, we counted 12 USB Type-C ports across all 3 rows of seats. That's gotta be some sort of record, right? Now, these seats are not as soft and plush as maybe an S-Class. They are quite snug, but they do have a lot of adjustment, which I said is in the touchscreen. And you get these nice soft cushions, which is a nice touch, It's not all about the back seat. Even the driver gets to relax just a little bit. Before we move ahead, a quick word on features because there are a lot of them. Even more than what you get in the imported EQE SUV. Highlights include 6 screens, 3 up front and 3 at the back if you count the tablet controller, and a super high-res head-up display. Heating, ventilation, massage and memory for the powered front seats and 5-zone auto climate control. There's front and rear wireless chargers, wireless Android Auto and Apple CarPlay, an excellent 15-speaker Burmester 3D sound system, and subtler stuff like soft closed doors. On the safety front, you get 9 airbags and of course parking sensors and a 360-degree camera, but also ADAS with level 2 autonomous driving capability. More on all this when we hit the road, but a big talking point here is the new 3rd row of seats. Now there's something you need to know before you get into the 3rd row. For one, this is as far as you'll ever have the 2nd row if you're sat in the 3rd row and hope to have any room for your knees, which sort of compromises the comfort for the 2nd row passenger, which makes using the 3rd row an occasional effort at best. The second thing you need to know is that when it's time to get into the 3rd row, you have to make sure that the center armrest of the 2nd row is folded in, otherwise these seats won't fold down. It'll fall with the center console and it will stop the process right there. Believe me, I've tried. So once that's all set, you do just have to pull one button, wait for the seats to motor out of the way, preferably without a driver sitting over there, and then this is the aperture you have to walk in. There's a step here that helps out. It's not too bad once you duck your way in. Put your feet in place, pull the same button back down. And just to give you an idea, that default position I spoke of earlier, that's how much knee room you'll have once you've got all the seats back. It is actually pretty decent like this. I'm sure your middle row passengers won't mind the slight compromise for short distances at least. But yeah, it's not a full-on 7-seater like the GLS is. It is occasional at best. But your 3rd row passengers, apart from the space, will be pretty comfy back here. Yes, the seat is low. There's practically no thigh support whatsoever. Headroom is very, very tight for an adult. And yes, it's strictly 2 seats back here. But you do get your own zone of climate control. There's no way to adjust it back here. It's done from the front touchscreen. And you do get some USB ports to charge your devices and cup holders. So yeah, for occasional use, for kids, this is a decent place to sit over short distances at least. Now, understandably, not everyone will be convinced by that sort of space, especially if they've sat in an MPV like an Innova. But even Mercedes says they're only for occasional use. Now, the good thing about 3rd row seats is that if you find them too small to really use, you can just fold them away and get more luggage space. But even with these 3rd row seats in place in the EQS SUV, you still get 217 liters of boot space. That's good for about 4-5 soft bags, which might last you well for an overnight stay. Another thing you'll notice is, much like the rear window shades, there's also a rear windscreen shade that's been retrofitted later on. It's a screen that's just been wedged into place. Again, it does the job, but it's not an actual fitment of the car. You can remove it if you don't like it. But should 217 liters of space not be enough for you, you can fold this 3rd row down, which is done manually, pulling these levers. They fold pretty flat in line with the rest of the floor, but that gives you a whole 880 liters of boot space. You will also notice that apart from the little luggage parcel shelf over here, there is no spare tire in this car. You do get a tire repair kit, but that's it. There will be no spare on offer because there's simply no place to keep it. And you can electronically fold down the 2nd row of seats via these buttons over here, and then you get over 2,000 liters of boot space. As with the EQE and EQS sedan, there's no frunk and you can't even open the bonnet. Now, at this point, you're probably wondering, what about the second row? Well, I've saved the best for last, and in fact, let's check it out on the move because it might just be the highlight of the EQS. Now, unfortunately for Mercedes' other large EQ models, the EQS sedan and the EQE SUV, the rear seat has never been one of their strengths, which is a shame because they are both vehicles that operate in a largely chauffeur-driven end of the market. But that's where the EQS SUV aims to make amends. So here I'm going to tell you if it has or hasn't. For one, you have to know that this is a huge car. It's got a 3.2 meter long wheelbase, and that liberates loads of space in the back seat. It is also electrically adjustable. This was sort of a middle position to make room for the third row, but this is how far back you can slide it. And at this point, the knee room is just phenomenal. Headroom, as you can tell, is also excellent and would be even for people taller than me. Now, there's no boss mode that lets you adjust the front passenger seat from the back, but the driver can do it from his seat, so that makes it possible from there. And you should also know that though not ventilated or massaging like the front seats, the rear seats are heated. There's also about 30 degrees of recline, which does let you relax a little bit, although it has to be said the comfort level here isn't quite on the same level as an S-Class or even the Maybach version of the EQS SUV. So if you want that ultimate chauffeur-driven experience, that's where you have to go. Shell out that little extra for the Maybach version. But it has to be said, of the current crop of big EQ models, barring the Maybach, this has to be the best of the lot. You do get a lot of creature comforts back here too. There is this set of big wireless noise cancelling headphones over the ear type. You get rear entertainment screens, of course. You get these handy cushions, and if you flip down the center armrest, you find another tablet controller that lets you operate the multimedia system. There are even cup holders back here and a little place to dock your phone. And should you want to charge it, there is a wireless charger for the back seat as well. This car also gets not just a panoramic sunroof but two really big glass panels. The front one opens and lets in a lot of light back here. But as I'm sure you might have noticed, this sun blind here isn't your conventional Mercedes sun blind that opens up from the window switch. Unfortunately, the EQS SUV is not equipped with that feature, and therefore Mercedes India has made this sort of retrofitted approach that lets you put in and take out this sunshade manually. Personally, I'm not a fan of the way it's executed. It does feel a little aftermarket, but it does get the job done if that's something you want in the back seat of your EQS SUV. Another thing I have to talk about back here is the ride quality, because for the chauffeur driven, that is absolutely critical. And it's impressive what they've managed to pull off with this car. Now, this is a big, heavy SUV, 2.8 tons of curb weight in this massive car. And it's riding on air suspension, which in some Mercedes models, the EQE SUV included, has proven to be a little too soft. Now here too, it is set up quite soft in the comfort mode. So what we found is that it pays to set it to sport mode for the suspension, if not necessarily the powertrain, to get a nice controlled ride that's still very, very comfortable. This car rides on 21-inch wheels as standard, and yes, you can feel those on some sharper bumps, but it's only on really sharp stuff that it rattles through into the cabin. Otherwise, ride comfort is actually excellent on this air suspension and these 21-inch wheels, and that's something buyers sat in the backseat will really appreciate. As for the driving experience, I assumed there would be nothing new to report compared to the other EQ cars, but I was not prepared for the performance. Like the EQS sedan, the EQS SUV in India is available in 580 guys, and what that means is 544 horsepower and 858 Newton meters of torque. And you'll need every last one of those Newton meters because this is a big and heavy car. 5.2 meters long, 2.8 tons, and loaded up with 7 people, and yes, you are seriously hauling a lot. And to feel the full extent of what that means, you pop it into sport mode and it just flies away. Mercedes claims a 0 to 100 kph time of 4.7 seconds, which is insane when you think about the physics involved. But just drive this thing and you will believe them. But here's the thing, it's not that neck snapping acceleration that we used to get from EVs of old. Mercedes has refined the system and now it's quite controlled, quite refined and quite civilized. So yes, you do gather speed very, very fast, but it's not uncomfortably so. And that's very, very Mercedes-Benz. For city use, you might want to dial it back into comfort mode because sport mode's responses are just a little bit too responsive. In comfort mode, there's a nice soft cushion that you plant your foot into before it really starts getting aggressive with its acceleration. The power is all there, but it's just hidden away a little further down the line. This car also comes with energy recuperation, which is handled very well in true Mercedes fashion, simply by pulling on the left or right pedal. 3 settings: no recuperation, normal recuperation, which is the setting I like the most, and strong recuperation, which is so very strong that it's practically one pedal driving, especially around town. If I let go of the accelerator pedal right now, make sure there's no one behind me, and it's really hauling me down fast. The car also comes with ADAS features with level 2 autonomous driving, and out here on Hyderabad's outer ring road, I can tell you that it works really well. And I'm happy to report, for the first time I've noticed at least in a Mercedes-Benz, you don't have to turn off the forward collision warning every time you start the car. It now remembers when you've turned it off and won't turn it on again the next time. Thank you. And while I'm not generally a fan of head-up displays, I find them a bit distracting, blocking your view. This one is a really good one if you like them. It's got all sorts of things including speed, ADAS functionality, cruise control, and even the whole map, giving you navigation turn by turn as well as the actual road on the map. Very, very handy. You never have to look down at your actual screen. But should you look down at your actual screen, it is quite informative. The main thing you want to see is state of charge and range. That's right there. In fact, there's 2 readouts, a standard range readout and a maximum range readout if you were on a hyper-miling run trying to set a Guinness World Records title, maybe. If you drove at your most efficient, that's what you could potentially get. As for range itself, I can't tell you on a drive like this. It's claimed to be 809 kilometers, 809 on the ARAI certification. That's a whole lot. This car has a bigger battery than the EQS sedan, 122 kilowatt hours. And so yeah, even with a big car like this, the range you're gonna get is very, very good. Of course, it's not gonna come near that in everyday driving, but I suspect you'll easily get over 500, no problem. Another cool thing, if slightly gimmicky, is the augmented reality sat-nav. Like right now, it's showing me a video feed from the front camera pointing at the road with arrows on it, projected on it, telling me where I have to turn or stay on the road, literal directions on the camera feed. I think it's a little bit distracting, to be honest, especially since the head-up display is doing such a great job on its own. But it's there, and it's a cool thing to show your friends, I suppose. A quick word on the handling, which of course is not sporty given the mass at play, but is tidy enough and impressively reassuring at highway speeds. What you don't notice so much on the highway but is really impressive at low speeds is the rear axle steering, which turns the rear wheels by up to 10 degrees. This, combined with a light steering overall, makes this huge and heavy SUV surprisingly maneuverable. So overall, the driving experience is very much what you'd expect from a large, luxurious Mercedes-Benz EV. It's refined, it's powerful, it's full of tech, including a lot of interesting driver aids, and it's even got enough range to let you do the odd outstation trip. Nothing too far though, okay? So back to what I was saying at the start. How is 1.4 crore rupees a bargain? First up, this is the Mercedes with S in its name, which means it belongs to a special class of car, and it's more affordable than both the S-Class and the EQS sedans, and only slightly more than a GLS. In fact, it's only 2 lakhs more than the imported EQE SUV, which now feels a little redundant. The Merc says the price gap will widen with price hikes and discounts, and existing owners will be incentivized on their next purchase. But then you have to also consider how much more the EQS SUV brings to the table. It's larger, more practical, more powerful, better equipped, and crucially has a better backseat than the EQE, and possibly any of the other SUVs in this segment. It's even got a better backseat than the EQS limousine, and being an SUV, it fixes one of the biggest complaints we had in that car, which was its low ground clearance. It really has addressed all the shortcomings of the previous EQ models in one go and done it at a great price too. Will this be the model to push Mercedes to the top of the luxury EV charts? We certainly think so. Thank you for watching.